Mystical City of God, translated from the original Spanish by Michael Kress, read by the translator. Dramatizations are also included. This is the full 4-volume Mystical City of God. Book 1, Chapter 7. How the Most High began his works, how all material things were created for man, and how angels and men were created to form a people for whom the incarnate Word would be the head. God, the cause of all causes, is the creator of all that exists. By the power of his arm, he willed to begin all his marvelous works ad extra, according to his will and timing. The order and beginning of creation is described by Moses in chapter 1 of Genesis. Since the Lord has granted me understanding of this, I will now recount what is appropriate to trace the works and mysteries of the incarnation of the Word and our redemption back to their origin. The first chapter of Genesis reads, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved over the waters. And God said, Let there be light, and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and he divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening and morning, the first day." Genesis 1 verses 1 to 5. On this first day, Moses writes that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This beginning refers to the act of the Almighty stepping out from his immutable being to create creatures outside of himself, giving them existence and delighting in his creations, which were perfectly suited to his will. To ensure perfect order, before creating intellectual and rational creatures, he formed the heavens for the angels and men, and the earth for mortals to journey as pilgrims. These places were so well ordered and fitting for their purposes that, as David says, the heavens proclaim the glory of God, and the firmament announces the work of his hands. Psalms 19 verse 2. The heavens, with their beauty, reveal God's magnificence and glory, for they are the repository of the reward prepared for the saints. The firmament and the earth announce the coming of creatures and men, who will inhabit the earth and walk upon it to journey toward their Creator. Before creating them, the Most High desired to prepare and provide everything necessary for their life and purpose, so that from every direction they would be compelled to obey and love their Creator and Benefactor. By his works they would come to know his admirable name and infinite perfections. Romans 1 verse 20. Moses writes that the earth was void, but he does not say the same of the heavens, because in the heavens God created the angels at the moment described as, God said, Let there be light, and there was light. This refers not only to material light, but also to the creation of the angelic or intellectual lights. Moses did not explicitly mention the angels under their own name, but instead referred to them metaphorically as light. This choice was prudent, as the Hebrew people tended to attribute divinity to new and lesser things than the angelic spirits. The metaphor of light was most appropriate to signify the angelic nature, as well as the mystical light of knowledge and grace with which they were illuminated at their creation. God created the earth at the same time as the empyrean heaven, intending to form, at the earth's center, the depths of hell. At the moment of the earth's creation, by divine decree, deep and vast caverns were formed within its globe, sufficient to serve as hell, limbo, and purgatory. In hell, at that very moment, material fire and all the other elements that now serve as punishment for the damned were also created. Soon after, the Lord divided the light from the darkness, calling the light day, and the darkness night. This division applied not only to the natural day and night, but also to the distinction between the good and bad angels. To the good angels, God granted the eternal light of his presence, calling it eternal day. To the bad angels, he assigned the night of sin and cast them into the eternal darkness of hell. In this, we are reminded of how closely God's merciful generosity, as Creator and life-giver, stands alongside his justice as a most righteous judge. The angels were created in the empyrean heaven and in a state of grace, so that their merit would precede the reward of glory. Although they were created in the place of glory, they did not yet behold the divinity face to face or with full clarity, for this was to be granted only to those who remained obedient to the divine will. The holy angels, as well as the rebellious ones, remained only briefly in their initial state as wayfarers. Their creation, testing, and final state occurred in 3 distinct stages or moments, divided by brief intervals. In the first moment, all the angels were created and adorned with grace and gifts, becoming most beautiful and perfect creatures. In the second moment, the Creator revealed His will to them, commanding them to recognize Him as their supreme Lord and to fulfill the purpose for which they had been created. During this interval, as described in chapter 12 of the Apocalypse, the great battle occurred between Saint Michael and his angels and the dragon and his followers. The good angels, persevering in grace, earned eternal happiness, while the disobedient angels, rising up against God, earned the punishment they now endure. Although in this second stage, or morala, everything could have happened very quickly, given the angelic nature and divine power, I understood that the mercy of the Most High allowed for some pause and interval. During this time, He presented the angels with the choice between good and evil, truth and falsehood, justice and injustice, His grace and friendship, and the malice of sin and enmity with God. He revealed to them the eternal rewards and punishments, the eternal loss and damnation prepared for Lucifer and those who would follow him. The Lord also showed them hell and its torments, which they clearly saw. In their superior and excellent nature, angels can perceive all created and limited things as they truly are. Thus, before falling from grace, they saw with clarity the place of their punishment. While they did not directly experience the glory of heaven in this way, they did have some knowledge of it, and received a clear and explicit promise from the Lord. With this, the Most High demonstrated His justice, and acted with perfect fairness and righteousness. Yet even this divine goodness and justification were not enough to stop Lucifer and his followers, who persisted in their rebellion. As a result, they were justly punished and cast into the depths of hell's caverns. The faithful angels, by contrast, were confirmed in grace and eternal glory. This all occurred during the third stage, where it became evident that no creature outside of God is naturally incapable of sin. Even the angel, with his superior nature and gifts of knowledge and grace, ultimately sinned and was lost. What then can fragile humanity do without God's protection, especially if it provokes him to abandon it? It remains to be understood what motivated Lucifer and his followers to sin. This is the root I seek, and what led to their disobedience and fall. I understood that, although they could have been guilty of many sins in potential, they did not commit all of them in action. However, from the sins they did commit with their depraved will, they acquired a disposition toward all forms of evil. They could not perform every evil act themselves, but they approved of sin and tempted others to it. Lucifer's primary fault lay in his disordered self-love. It stemmed from his awareness of the great gifts and beauty he possessed, both in nature and grace, which surpassed those of the lower angels. He dwelled excessively on this knowledge, and the pleasure he took in himself dulled his gratitude toward God, the sole source of everything he had received. Turning his focus inward, he delighted again in his own beauty and gifts, claiming them as his own and loving them improperly. This disordered self-love not only led Lucifer to pride in what he had received from a higher source, but also caused him to envy and covet other gifts and excellences he did not possess. Unable to obtain them, he conceived a mortal hatred and indignation against God, who had created him from nothing, and against all his creatures. From this disordered self-love sprang many other sins: disobedience, presumption, injustice, infidelity, blasphemy, and even a form of idolatry, as Lucifer desired for himself the worship and reverence owed to God alone. He blasphemed against God's divine greatness and holiness, betrayed the faith and loyalty he owed to his Creator, sought to destroy all creation, and arrogantly presumed he could accomplish all this and more. Thus his pride continues to rise and persists, although his arrogance far exceeds his strength. His power cannot increase, but one sin calls forth another, leading to ever deeper depravity. Lucifer was the first angel to sin, as noted in Isaiah 14 verse 12, and he persuaded others to follow him. Therefore he is called the Prince of Demons, not by nature, for he has no such title by nature, but by guilt. Those who fell were not from one single order or hierarchy of angels, but from all of them. Many fell from each. To better explain the honor and excellence Lucifer sought in his pride and envy, I note, as it was shown to me, that in all of God's works there is equity, weight, and measure. Before the angels could turn toward any disordered ends, divine providence determined to reveal to them, immediately after their creation, the purpose for which they were made with such a high and excellent nature. They were illuminated in this way. First, they had an explicit understanding of the being of God, one in substance and three in persons. They received the command to adore and revere him as their Creator and Supreme Lord, infinite in his being and attributes. All the angels obeyed this command, but with some difference. The good angels obeyed out of love and justice, freely offering their affection, believing and accepting what was beyond their comprehension, and fulfilling the command joyfully. Lucifer, however, submitted only because he found it impossible to do otherwise. He did not act with perfect charity, for he divided his will between himself and the infallible truth of the Lord. This division made the command feel burdensome and difficult to him, and he did not fulfill it with a heart full of love and justice. Thus he became predisposed to fall. Although this hesitation and lack of zeal did not strip Lucifer of grace, it weakened his disposition. He began to show some frailty in virtue and spirit, and his beauty did not shine as it ought. To my understanding, the effect of this hesitation and difficulty in Lucifer was similar to the effect of a deliberate venial sin on a human soul. However, I do not assert that he committed either venial or mortal sin at this point, for he did fulfill God's command. Yet his obedience was lukewarm and imperfect, motivated more by reason's compulsion than by love and a willing heart. Thus he prepared himself to fall. Secondly, God revealed to the angels that he intended to create human nature and rational creatures inferior to them, who would love, fear, and revere him as their creator and eternal good. He also revealed that human nature would be greatly favored, as the second person of the Holy Trinity was to take on human form, becoming both man and God. Through this hypostatic union, human nature would be elevated, and this God-man would be recognized not only as God, but also as the head of all creation, including the angels themselves. The angels were instructed to revere and adore him, acknowledging him as their superior in both dignity and grace, and to serve him. God also made known the fairness, justice, and reason behind this decree. The merits of the foreseen actions of this God-man had earned the angels the grace they possessed and the glory they were to receive. Moreover, for the sake of his own glory, this God-man would be raised above all creatures. All who were capable of knowing and enjoying God would be joined to him as members of his body, recognizing and honoring him as their head. The angels were given a command to obey and revere this decree. All the obedient and holy angels accepted this command with humble and loving devotion, joyfully surrendering their wills to God. However, Lucifer, filled with pride and envy, resisted this decree and incited other angels to do the same. He persuaded them to rebel, proposing that he, rather than the humanized Word, should be their head. He envisioned an independent dominion, separate from God and the hypostatic union. Such was the blindness caused by Lucifer's envy and arrogance that he infected many angels with his disordered desires, leading them into sin. This rebellion resulted in the great battle described by St. John in Revelation 12 verse 7. The holy and obedient angels, zealous to defend the glory of the Most High and the honor of the foretold God-man, sought permission and a blessing from the Lord to confront and resist Lucifer and his followers. This permission was granted. At the same time, another divine mystery unfolded. Alongside the command to obey the humanized Word, the angels were given a third precept. They were to recognize and revere a woman, in whose womb the only begotten of the Father would take on human flesh. This woman was to be their queen, surpassing all other creatures, both angelic and human, in the gifts of grace and glory. The good angels humbly obeyed this precept, exalting God's power and marveling at his divine plan. However, Lucifer and his followers responded with even greater pride and rebellion. In his disordered rage, Lucifer coveted for himself the honor of being the head of all humanity and the angelic orders. He even desired the hypostatic union for himself, refusing to accept that it was decreed for the Word and would be accomplished through the Virgin Mary. Regarding the decree that the Blessed Virgin, the Mother of the Word, would be superior to him, Lucifer rebelled with horrendous blasphemies, consumed by unrestrained indignation against the Creator of such great wonders. Provoking his followers, this dragon declared,
"These commands are unjust, and my greatness is insulted. This nature which you, Lord, regard with such love and favor so much, I will pursue and destroy. I will use all my power and cunning to thwart your plan. As for this woman, the Mother of the Word, I will cast her down from the state of grace and glory. You promised to grant her. Your intention will fail by my hand."
This arrogant defiance provoked the righteous wrath of the Lord. Humbling Lucifer, the Almighty replied, "This woman whom you refuse to honor will crush your head. Through her you will be vanquished and utterly annihilated. If death entered the world through your pride, then through the humility of this woman, life and salvation will come to mortals. From her nature and her offspring, they will receive the crowns and rewards that you and your followers have forfeited." Lucifer, filled with indignant pride, responded with further threats against the entire human race and the divine will. Meanwhile, the good angels, fully aware of the Lord's just indignation against Lucifer and his allies, rose to defend the glory of the Most High. Armed with reason, truth, and divine understanding, they confronted the dragon and his rebellious followers. In this conflict, the Almighty revealed yet another profound mystery. Having already shown all the angels the great sacrament of the hypostatic union, he now presented to them the Blessed Virgin in a sign or vision. This revelation was akin to the way we humans might perceive imaginary visions adapted to angelic understanding. In this vision, the Lord displayed the most perfect representation of human nature in the form of a woman. This woman, destined to be the Queen of Heaven and the Mother of the Word incarnate, was adorned with graces and gifts beyond anything given to any other creature. The power of the Most High was to be made more manifest in her than in all the rest of creation. In her the Lord deposited the fullness of his gifts and graces to the highest and most eminent degree. This vision of the Blessed Virgin was clear and undeniable to all the angels, both good and evil. The sight inspired the good angels to marvel and break into songs of praise, fortifying their zeal to defend the honor of the incarnate Word and his most holy Mother. They armed themselves with the burning zeal of this revelation, wielding it as an impregnable shield. In stark contrast, the dragon and his followers were filled with unquenchable fury and hatred toward Christ and his Mother. This enmity and rebellion formed the heart of the events described in Revelation chapter 12. As I have been instructed in this matter, I will recount these events in the following chapter.